Hello and welcome to Consider This. My name is Clement Norris. As always, I am so thankful that you have taken the time to listen to the program. Today, I am going to read two questions that I received. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to um, kind of combine them because the second question actually was asked I guess a little bit more detailed, whatever, than the first one. So let me read the questions for you, and then we'll kind of get into my notes, and we'll go from there. It says also a quick suggestion for consider this. Can you, on one of the future lectures, get into the historical figure known as Joan of Arc? Her story is amazing, the exclamation point, and should be well known by any Christian, whether Catholic or not. Her story stands as quite an act of obedience to God. And for those of us who are, I am not an expert on Joan of Arc, but I am somewhat familiar with her. She was a young female. She was French. She was burned at the stake. She died young. She was 19 years old. You can Google her and find out more about her if you be so inclined. She was very convicted in her faith and was willing to die for it. She felt that she had visions. She was a Christian. She was raised Catholic. Um, and Joan of Arc was a key figure in the wars between French and England. She literally led the French army into battle. They were victorious. Later on, she ended up in a trial, I believe, accused of heresy. It was either being accused of heresy or ultimately, I guess, making herself look like a guy. But she, a male, but she was, of course, killed. And the person who wrote the question clearly thinks very highly of her, which is not a bad thing. With this program, and I think with a lot of the people that are mentioned in this program, particularly those in the Bible, I have said it time and time again. The Apostle Paul said, "Out of the mouths of two or three witnesses shall everything be established." Uh, Joan of Arc is not a biblical witness. She does not have a book, or if you like the word epistle or letter, she does not have one in the Bible, and therefore I'm not inclined to reference her. But she did, I think, what a lot of us would be very reluctant to do, if at all, and that was die for her faith. But I want to kind of include what he said about her in the second question. The second part of the question says, can you elaborate a bit, or I should say, second part of the question, the second question, I'm going to kind of bring them together. Can you elaborate a bit on the names and characters mentioned, such as Abraham, Jacob, Paul, Noah, and then he says, and such, like some evidence of their existence. So he's specifically focusing on any evidence of their existence. And at one point, he says, literally in the question, kind of jammed in between these two, and that's why I kind of combined them together. He wrote non-faith based evidence, non-faith based evidence, which I thought was kind of interesting. Now, I'm going to say this about evidence. And by all means, if anybody out there who understands this better than me, please let me know. But the way I see it, there are two types of evidence. There is direct evidence, and then there is circumstantial evidence. And then when you look at circumstantial evidence, is that there are two types of circumstantial evidence. There is weak circumstantial evidence, and then there is strong circumstantial evidence. There have been cases won in court based solely on circumstantial evidence, sometimes a combination of the two, but there even have been occasions when the evidence has been weak, but there was enough of that weak evidence to sway a jury. And with this program, I say it over and over again, beloved, believe not every spirit, but try the spirit to see whether or not they are of God. For many false prophets have gone out into the world. And so, that also applies to me. Don't believe it just because I said it. Uh, Study it, research it. You can find out for yourself. Even the question that the person's asking here, you can literally Google it to see what archaeological evidence is out there. I've talked about Abraham and some of these people he's mentioned, and I've given some of their background story. I think especially if you go look at the program we did on rest in peace, I pretty much did a resume on each one of them, or at least most of them. So, in a sense, we have done that already. Now, when we go back again, talking about evidence, we go back to it. I say, and I think most, if not all of you all would agree that there literally have been trials, one based on circumstantial evidence. Um, I was looking at some because I do kind of like science. I got a degree in science, and I like looking at some science, especially when you're talking about the cosmos and them kind of things. And you talk to any scientist, I think it's fair to say, if you ask them about dark matter or black holes, they're going to tell you that they don't have any direct evidence to show the existence or to prove the existence of a dark hole or black matter. However, there is what they consider to be strong circumstantial evidence that black holes do exist, and therefore I think you can open up any modern science book today, and you will see that people, particularly like Stephen Hawkins, is credited for the work that he has done on black holes, and scientists believe that they exist. They believe that dark matter exists, not because they have seen them, but because they have seen the things that they think should be occurring because of them. Um, for example, with the dark, not the black holes, that fact that the stars that are closer to a black hole move at an extremely higher rate than the stars that are a little further away from it. Uh, Apparently, as they get closer to what's called the event horizon, they move even faster. Matter of fact, in one program, they were talking about 1 million times faster than stars that are a little further back. And so, when the stars get closer, their speed, their rate of speed speeds up at a very high rate. And they look at that, and scientists say that is proof of a black hole, and those stars, the speed, they're going faster because they're getting closer to the event horizon. And so the closer you get, the more the gravity pulls them in. And so when we are talking about uh, the evidence, when somebody says to me, well, I want the evidence, that's like asking me to give you evidence of God. Well, I feel like I'm evidence of God. I feel like you're evidence of God. Somebody may consider that circumstantial evidence. I think that an atom with the neutron and the electrons, and the fact that they stay together, and so that we can get matter, things can exist. I can touch this desk. I can touch. Uh, uh, I can use this camera. Those things to me, they don't fly apart and just disappear. Just something keeps those things together. That's evidence to me of the existence of God. Now, one of the things that I found interesting, because whenever somebody asks me a question that I know for a fact that they most likely already know the answer to that question, I kind of wonder why they're asking me that question. Because there are people out there that want to destroy Christianity. They want to kind of suggest, well, if you can't give me direct, solid evidence that they exist. In other words, you can't show me a birth certificate. You can't introduce me to any of their family members. You can't show me any DNA. I want to see some blood. I want to see some direct evidence. Let me see their the graduation certificate, some direct evidence. Some of them out there try to say, well, if you can't prove that they existed, that they were historical, real people, then why would you believe anything they have to say? Why would you rely on the Bible? To me, the Bible, for me, and for millions of people around the globe, the Bible is evidence that these individuals existed. One of the people that the question mentions is, for example, Noah. Uh, all you gotta do is Google or go onto YouTube and put in Noah's Ark. There are I think statistically, a rather large number of scientists who are atheists who believe that Noah's Ark's been found. You can see pictures of it. Obviously, it's very old, but when they look at the dimensions, it has decayed immensely. But when they look at the dimensions and everything on the mountain that it's sitting on, I believe it's Mount Ararat. But when you look at those pictures, you can Google it. They say that ark was real, that it existed, and that is the ark. That for me is strong circumstantial evidence that therefore Noah must have been real. The Noah that's mentioned in the Bible. Now, of course, and by reading the question, they want you to, I guess, avoid anything that they think is dealing with faith. And that to me is something, it depends on what you're defining as that. I say it depends on what you're defining it, faith as, because to me, faith is evidence-based. There's this idea. This is another point I want to make here, is that there's this idea that faith is kind of like this blind thing that you just kind of embrace, and there's never any evidence for it. But that's at least I don't think that's actually what the Bible's saying. Let me read to you what the Bible says about faith. It says, now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. And some people take that and think, oh, well, you never see it. That means it says it right there. Well, let's see if that's what the author is saying. And in this case, the author is a real person named Paul, who literally tells you his history and his story and his encounter in the Bible. I think there's very few, of any people, that doubted that he actually existed. He says, by faith, Noah, being warned of God of things not seen as yet. In other words, notice what he says, warned of God of things not seen as yet. In other words, yes, he had faith, but he was eventually going to see whatever it was God told him or promised him. So by faith, Abraham believed that Sarah at an old age would have a male child, and eventually, within a 9-month period, he physically saw it. He saw the evidence of it because, of course, Isaac was born. So being warned of God's things, just seemed moved with fear, prepared an ark to the saving of his house. Talking about Noah, the ark that science say existed. You have Abraham, right? Abraham, by faith, but he saw the evidence that because he saw his son. By the which he condemned the world and became heir of righteousness, which is by faith. Hebrews 11:7. Then it says, these all died in faith, not having received the promises, but having seen them afar off, and were persuaded of them, and embraced them, and confessed that they were strangers and pilgrims on the earth. Hebrews 11:13. So when you say to me, well, you want evidence, and you don't want no faith-based evidence, in a way, I kind of really don't know how to take that, because I don't really know what you're defining as evidence. I don't know if you're accepting circumstantial evidence. And if you are not, again, like I said, to me, my existence is evidence, because I just cannot wrap my mind around the fact that every human being, every animal, everything I can see and touch, that nothingness put it here. That nothingness gave it a heart, nothingness gave it a brain, nothingness gave it a circulatory system. that nothingness gave it skin, uh, designed us the way we are. I can't now. If there are those out there who can, that's on you. I can't accept that it just happened without nothing being there to make it happen. I just don't get that. Seems like to me it requires some form of intellect to know what you're doing and how you're doing it, and then to have a tremendous amount of power to do it. To me, that's God. That's evidence. The fact that I breathe in oxygen and it goes through my body and keeps my heart pumping, and the way I eat and digest food and how it nourishes my body and provides it. To me, that's evidence. So I'm not sure what this person is defining as evidence. Um, Now, I do believe that for some people, the type of evidence that they would consider acceptable, that for them, they would say, okay, that is the evidence that I was looking for. They will have to get that kind of evidence on the other side because the Bible's clear. At some point, God is bringing this to an end. And then when he does, there is going to be an accountability for everyone. He talks about the New Jerusalem coming down from heaven. And the saved are going to be inside the city, and the lost are going to be on the outside of that city. And it doesn't matter where you are, I believe, it doesn't matter where you are, whether you're on the outside or whether you're on the inside. You'll be able to see Abraham, Noah, Moses, Paul, Peter, Jesus Christ, and everybody else who you didn't want to believe existed until you kind of saw them your own self. Now, I really, really hope and pray that when you do see your evidence, that you see it on the inside of that city and not on the outside. I really do. One of the things, another thing that really kind of threw me a little bit. The person who wrote the question, they think very highly of Joan of Arc. Well, Joan of Arc was a Christian. Joan of Arc believed in the Bible. She believed in it so much she was willing to die for it. If she believed in it so much that she was willing to die for it, then I have to believe, because I have not spoken to her. I have not spoken to her directly. Matter of fact, I've never talked to her. I've never seen her. I mean, other than what people tell me, I have no direct evidence she actually existed. I do believe she existed, but I have no direct evidence. I'm convinced that she believed in the Bible. Therefore, she believed in all those people that he's questioning in this question. She believed in Abraham. She believed in Noah. She believed in all of them. Jacob, King David, Solomon. If you go on to Google and just put in there archaeological evidence for the proof of the existence of a lot of people in the Bible, not just this little select a few that he pulled out here. A lot of the kings and some of those others, particularly some of the kings and the governors. There's substantial direct evidence that they existed. Their names are logged somewhere. In other words, outside of the Bible, they're mentioned. And I'm trying to think of a quick example. I guess like Darius, the Persian king. He's mentioned in the Bible, but there's ample, sufficient evidence to show that he was an actual real person who lived. Now, another point I think that you can consider to me is evidence. And it's not evidence that's based on faith. I want to read something that Paul wrote. And I think it makes the point for this type of evidence. He said, am I not an apostle? Am I not free? Have I not seen Jesus Christ our Lord? Are not ye my work in the Lord? If I be not an apostle unto others, yet doubtless I am to you. For the seal of my apostleship are ye in the Lord. That's 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 1 and 2. And I feel very, very comfortable in putting another word in place of the word apostleship. For the seal of my evidence, of my existence, are ye in the Lord. It's an argument that Jesus, if you needed proof, evidence that wasn't based on faith, that Jesus was a real person and lived, just like with the black hole, just like with dark matter, what I have to do is say, well, wait a minute, this person said these things, and out of these, look at what all came out of there. Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. And definitely within Islam and Christianity, you have billions of followers. Judaism got to be up in the hundreds of millions. That ain't even mentioned in the other religions that are one way or another come out of there. When I say Christians, I'm talking Catholic and Protestants alike. When I look around the globe and see all those churches, see all the things in history that has been shaped by it, good or bad, and all of them make reference to the same person. Nobody's trying to, or at least in very rare occasions, trying to take it on themselves. They all make it to this person named Jesus Christ. Why wouldn't I consider that sufficient evidence? There's people who probably would have done horrible things in life that they did not do because they know that this guy named Jesus Christ disapproved of it. Why is that not sufficient evidence? I don't know. But it just seems to me, when we, in terms of looking at the various points, that's another point that definitely I think need to be considered. It's not based on faith. It's based on the fact that you can walk down the street and just about on every block you're gonna see a church, a Christian church, or you're gonna see a mosque, or you're gonna see a synagogue. Not just in this country, but in other countries around the globe. This man who put so much passion in people that make them want to go out and tell others what he said. Why isn't that not evidence enough for some people? I don't know. Unless they're just looking for some type of reason to destroy that which Christ has built up. Jesus said, no other foundation can any man lay, or Paul wrote that no other foundation can any man lay than that which was laid by Jesus Christ. He laid a foundation that is so strong and so solid that it will be around a lot longer than the person who asked the question, and or anybody who is asking the question for the same reason. What does proving whether or not they actually existed with hard direct evidence, what has that have to do with what the person said and the impacts it has? For example, another point, I can go into the Bible, I can take you in the book of Leviticus, I can read to you what, because the book of Leviticus is credited to Moses, so either Moses wrote it or he dictated to someone who wrote it for him. And in there, I can show you a lot of things, and we're gonna some future shows I plan on covering them, but things that he said that have a health application to them that modern day science today has confirmed. There is modern day science, empirical science based on rigorous studies to show that what was said is true. For example, saturated fats in a diet. Saturated fats was clearly used in the Bible and Old Testament as a symbol of sin, but there was also negative health implications. If the people in the Bible even if they just saw it as a sin issue, if they did what Moses told them, or they didn't do what Moses told them not to do, which he said God told them not to abstain from the saturated fats, that means they most likely, and I think that any medical person would agree with me, they most likely would have lower rates, if any, strokes, heart disease, um, certain cancers, from reducing saturated fats. And when I'm talking about saturated fats, and again, we'll talk about it later, but saturated fats from animal sources, not from plant-based sources, but from animal sources. And it's going to be very specific. Now, if Moses said that, even though he said this is what God told me, Moses said that, and all these years later, thousands of years later, we keep proving that it's true. Why would I be more focused on trying to prove he existed rather than the fact that what he said is just true? And why can't that truth be evidence of his existence? Because that's not faith-based. It's not faith-based at all. How do you want your evidence? How do you want it? Because at the end of the day, if you're just that opposed to something, there's really nothing that I'm going to say that's going to make a difference. Because you know as well as I do, everybody out there listening, I do not have a birth certificate for Jesus, for Paul, for Abraham, for Moses, for Adam, for Eve, for none of them. Nor can I get one. Matter of fact, I think I probably said it already, but I don't have a birth certificate for Joan of Arc. I can't recall ever seeing anything that she wrote with her own hand. I did see something that was apparently considered a quote from her, but somebody else wrote that. Yet, the person who sent me the question thinks very highly of Joan of Arc. Then I want to try to hopefully close out real quick here because I don't want to go, I'm trying to keep it under 30 minutes. I want to just talk real quick about the fact that there are other sources outside of the Bible, sources that did not claim to be Christian, was not trying to support Christianity, historians, some, or at least for sure one, that was in the first century, which the first century was when Paul started his ministry. I think he started around 80, 30 something, 31, 32, 33, 80 something. Well, guess what? Josephus was a Jewish historian in the first century. And Josephus, who was not a Christian, he talks about Jesus Christ. I don't have Jesus' birth certificate, but he talks about this man named Jesus Christ who had a lot of followers. They believed that he was more than just a man, that they were committed to him even after his death, and that they apparently that they were growing in terms of numbers. Josephus talks about that. Now, I don't know why anybody would have an issue with Josephus, especially if they didn't know him personally. I don't have his birth certificate either. But historians, there's no doubt in historian minds that Josephus lived, and Josephus was a historian, a Jewish historian, and that he wrote about Jesus. And go look for yourself. Look in Google or whatever search engine you use. Go look, just type it in there. Josephus also talked about James, the brother of Jesus. When you open up your Bible, you see in the New Testament the book of James. Josephus talks about James, and he talks about how James was killed. That he talks about James was killed by the Sanhedrin. Is that evidence? That fact that Josephus talks about him, a first century Jewish historian who was probably contemporary, if not very close to the same time that some of these guys were around, particularly John the Revelator, the man who wrote the gospel, the revelation of first, second, and third epistle of John, who wrote the Gospel of John and who wrote the book of Revelations or dictated it to someone. Josephus was around. And that's what he said. And he was not a converted Christian. He was a Jew, to my knowledge, up to his dying day. He remained in Judaism. Another, the Babylonian Talmud. The Babylonian Talmud, it also mentions Jesus. Why would they mention Jesus in the Babylonian Talmud? Especially the person who wrote me this question. Look it up. Wasn't no hard search. You can put in there archaeological evidence for the proof or existence of these individuals. What that's going to do to change what somebody said they said, I don't know. It ain't going to change anything for me. That ain't. I'm not going to take the Bible and throw it away because they can't prove that these folks exist, so therefore I'm just going to throw this away. No, that's not happening. I hope it won't. I hope it won't happen for anybody. You can also look up Tacitus, Tacitus. Tacitus was a Roman historian. I do believe Tacitus lived in the first century. He was around in AD 64. So if my memory serves me correctly, that means he was around probably when John the Revelator was, because John lived to an old age. And now I'm kind of hating myself. I wish I'd have pulled up the dates so that you can say, well, and then this is just an example. So we said, well, Paul was around until, he started in the 30, around 30, 32, somewhere in there, if he, or close to it. And if he lived up to 80, 50 something or 80, 60 something, because I can't recall off the top of my head. But if he did, then that's pretty close. And so when you have Tacitus, and he's writing about Nero, who we know was an actual historical person, and is Nero blamed Christians for the burning of Rome. Tacitus wrote, Nero fastened the guilt on a class hated for their abominations, called Christians by the populace. Christus, from whom the name had its origins, suffered the extreme penalty during the reign of Tiberius at the hands of Pontius Pilate, mentioned in the Bible. And a most mischievous superstition, just checked for the moment, again broke out not only in Judea, the first source of the evil, but even in Rome. And when we open up the Bible, we have the book of Romans. This person, Tacitus, was not a Christian, nor was he trying to promote it. He was simply writing the fact that they existed, they were there, and who it was that they were following and believing in. There's Pliny the Younger, Pliny, Pliny the Younger. Pliny was the Roman governor of Bithynia in Asia Minor. He wrote about Jesus. He wrote about this man named Jesus. He talked about these followers that Jesus had. Why would Pliny, a person who was a Roman governor, a government official, who was not a Christian, was not promoting Christian, at least we have no evidence that he was, and he's writing about this man called Jesus Christ and these followers that he had. You could really take that question that was sent to me, and you can actually apply that to, unless you literally just try to find some way to destroy all religions, you can apply that to many religions. Like, find me proof that Buddha actually lived, that he actually existed. In the same way, you want evidence for these other people. Find me evidence. I would not go up to somebody in the Islamic faith and say, show me some evidence that Muhammad actually lived. Where's his birth certificate? Show me somebody in his direct family. But I look around the globe, and there's probably close to 2 billion of them, if not more. They speak very highly of the man. And back then, other people could have just did whatever little sneaky thing they wanted to do. Nope, they all make reference to this guy and his impact that he had. If that is not proof that he existed, I don't know what kind of proof that you could possibly be looking for. And I cannot miraculously make that type of proof pop up. So that is my response, and probably only response is going to be to that question. It's not something that I'm interested in going back and forth about because, again, uh, I'm being asked a question that the person who asked that question, they knew when they asked it that I could not give them an answer with direct evidence to prove the existence of anybody in the Bible. But if they just remain patient, if they just remain patient, God is going to eventually show them all the evidence that they need because they're going to meet the people. They're going to meet them on the inside or on the outside. I hope it's on the inside, but they're going to meet them. Unfortunately, if they meet them and they meet them on the outside, then it's going to be too late. However, at least they will have the satisfaction of getting their evidence. Hopefully, before their absolute final moments, they will say, thank you, God, for giving me the evidence that I needed to believe all these people, Adam, Eve, uh, Abraham, Moses, Noah, King David, Solomon, and on, to prove to me they existed, even though you gave me plenty of evidence before I got here. Some strong circumstantial, some weak circumstantial evidence that many of those people in the Bible do exist, and you use archaeology to do it. But because I was trying to destroy what you were trying to build up, I refused to accept that. That just simply wasn't good enough. I hope that is not the case for many of you out there that are listening. I'm sorry because I do think I ran over 30 minutes a little bit. If you like what you heard today, but please hit the like button. If you did not like it, hit the dislike button. If you liked it or dislike it, share it. If you dislike it, say, I can't believe this guy, he's nuts. Let me share this with some of my other buddies who are going to also disagree with it. Go ahead and share it. Send in comments, especially, if you dislike it, tell me why you dislike it. Maybe, or you may be able to edify not only me, but other viewers by sending us something that maybe I missed, because it is possible that I missed something. Um, and I would be very thankful if you did. So again, like, dislike, leave a comment, share. I hope you had a beautiful day. Thank you for listening, and goodbye.